everyone, it's Kristen and I am here today to show you how I colored these beautiful sequins on my mermaid coloring page. I got the inspiration for this from the children's book called The Rainbow Fish. I really liked his scales and I just studied them, looked at them, and saw that it was really easy actually to recreate. So I'm starting off by using a Sharpie pen and just in the corner of a scale, I just draw little circles. And I want to make sure they all touch on all the edges and try to keep them roughly the same size and fill in the area. And don't worry too much if you make a mistake, because after we color these, if you do make a mistake, it most likely won't even be noticeable. So the page that I'm using, the Be Mermazing page, will be available in my Etsy shop, and I will post the link to that in the comments below for you. But as always, all of my content is always available first to my Patreon subscribers. They get first access to everything, including these tutorials, and they get the live tutorials before the public does. Which means, I do this in my Facebook group for them, and they get to ask questions and give me suggestions and tell me what colors they want me to use and all that kind of fun stuff. So if you want to be one of my patrons, you can head on over to patreon.com/KristenApril, and I will put that link below as well. And then you can also have first access to all of my content, my coloring pages and tutorials, everything I create. So now what I'm doing is I'm going back, and you can do this as you're drawing the circles, but I like to draw all the circles first and then go back and fill in all of the little blank open areas between each of the circles. I'm just using my Sharpie pen again, but you can use a black marker. And if you don't have a Sharpie pen, any felt tip pen or thin tipped marker would be fine for drawing these circles. Now you can also do this on every single scale, but I chose to mimic the rainbow fish and just do some random scales. And so I would do this on one of them, skip a couple, do another one, and just kind of spread them apart a little bit so it's not too overwhelming, and then the sequins really stand out against all of the rest of the page. So this is what it looks like after I filled in the circles. And now I am taking a light gray and coloring in some circles, just a few random ones, and doing the same with a medium gray. So I just, skip 4 or 5 and just kind of bounce around coloring those in. Now the gray is really important. No matter what color palette you choose, you want to use grays. This is going to create the shadows and the highlights. So, if you choose to do pinks and yellows instead of blues and greens like I did, you still always want to have 2 shades of gray in there. So there I was using a teal colored marker. Now I'm using a light green marker, and I'm just following along the same way of just kind of bouncing around, coloring in different circles. And the markers that I'm using for coloring in are Spectrum Noir markers and Prismacolor Premier markers. But you can use any marker. This one is kind of a turquoise color. And then there is a yellowish green, a really bright color. But as I was saying, you can use any marker, Crayola, Copic markers, whatever you have will work. And you could do this with colored pencils as well. I just prefer markers. They're less harsh on your hands. And this is sort of a chartreuse green. Now, using those same colors that you used, you're going to go back in and add a little dot or circle inside each of the ones that you just colored, and this is what is going to give it the sequin look. And you want to make sure that you use a darker color than the color that you used in the circle. So you can bounce around with this also. It doesn't have to be any right or wrong way. It's just make sure that the color is a little bit darker than the original one that you used. And what's really nice about this is when you're adding a new color on top of one of the old colors, it creates a whole different shade of that color. So by adding a turquoise on top of the yellowish green, it kind of creates a spring green kind of color. So you're actually getting new colors just by doing this one little easy step. I also want to mention that you don't have to use this just for coloring in mermaid scales. You can use it on fabric or any coloring page you want to add some sequins to. So this is my Uniball Signo white gel pen, and I am going to go in and add some white dots to my sequins, and I'm going to be adding it to the ones where the colors didn't really come through when we did our second colors, and just a few random ones. You can use any white gel pen, but this one is my favorite brand. I even used to use correction pen fluid before I had white gel pens. The last step for your sequins is to just go in and add a little sparkle, and you can do this just by kind of drawing in a little asterisk or a star, a cross, and this kind of gives it that shimmery glow that sequins have. And there is the final product. You can see all the mistakes when it's close up like that, but when you look at the page as a whole, you're not going to notice those mistakes. Now for the second part of this coloring page, I'm just going in and adding some solid colors to the rest of the scales. And here I'm just going in a line stroke instead of scribbling because it kind of saves my markers. And I didn't like the look of that, so now I'm going back in and adding a second coat with the thicker end of the marker. And that, once it dries, you will not be able to notice the lines so much. And I'm using the same colors that I used when creating the sequins. That way it kind of gives it a consistent look and feel to it. But you can, of course, use whatever colors you like. I like to stick to one palette when I'm doing my pages. Again, I'll go in and add a second coat. You can continue adding more coats to this. And I just want to mention also these are alcohol markers, so they will have a little bit of a different effect than a water-based marker such as Crayola or Tombows would have. So I just continue on by filling in the rest of the page. And then you will be able to see kind of how all of the colors tie together when they're all filled in and colored in nicely. I don't really like to scribble with my markers because it ruins the nibs on the markers, and although these are replaceable, I'd rather not replace them if I don't have to. And here is the page. I added a little bit of gray, light gray to the letters, and then I layered in some darker grays to give the letters a little bit of a gradient. I also went back to my white gel pen and added some dots to the bottom of the letters and used my Sharpie pen to draw in some extra little scales inside each of the solid scales. So thank you so much for watching and stay sassy.